Oregon wins against Oregon State 49-14. I think you're making some valid points. I mean, if you go look at my Twitter account, I'm like, Gundy's calling a great game. They're optimistic a little bit. Defense was they hadn't quite got gashed when I had mentioned some stuff, and then the walls gave in, and Oregon's blowing them out.
Yeah,
Jaden Lamar with a really nice, little screen touchdown pass there, little dump pass that had the offensive lineman pulling in front, but they didn't even need him. Nobody was around to touch them.
No.
Look, I think it's one thing. I think there are certainly things to question or criticize with Oregon State. I think what's tough for me is that I didn't come in. I picked Oregon State with the points. We do the rah-rah beef duck thing that every, people play into. I wasn't overly optimistic they were winning this game. I knew what the talent gap was. I'm not an idiot. And so, I'm not shocked to see Oregon have success with Gabriel on the ground or through the air or a Jaden Lamar breakaway run. None of that caught me off guard. So it's hard for me to sit here and have so much criticism because Oregon State's schedule is not Oregon going forward. Is a bunch of Mountain West patsies, a couple tough Mountain West teams. UNLV's looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Boise State, I think, right now is better than you. Washington State looks better than you.
Purdue got housed.
Again, I'm not going to take away that Purdue lost by 60, so Oregon State's going to roll. They might win that game, and I'll be very happy if they do. I have no feel for what Purdue really is on a talent level with Oregon State right now. What I would say there are little things defensively. I don't know. I know Oregon has much better players than Oregon State's defense on their offense. But my God, I just sometimes I'm watching them like, did you in any way prepare for any of this?
I know.
And the other part is, and this doesn't matter, would not change anything. Punting down 25 on 4th and 6 at almost the 50.
That wouldn't bother you? Yeah.
Did it bother me?
Yeah.
I saved it. I'm talking about it on a Monday. If that's who you are as a coach, very concerning.
Yeah.
Very concerning. You had to wait to be down 32 before you decided to go for it on 4th down.
You got nothing to lose at that point. You might as well give it a shot. I think part of my optimistic take, honestly, coming out of the game for Oregon State had to do with the fact that, and I know this will make people's heads explode because Oregon just barely beat Boise State a week ago. You're not playing a team that's that talented the rest of the year. I know that Boise State hung with Oregon. Again, a lot of that was self-inflicted wounds and them just not finding their rhythm. I think if Oregon and Boise were to meet again in a couple of weeks, I have a strong opinion that the game would go a little bit different because Oregon just couldn't get out of their own way in that game with penalties piling up left and right, killing drives, turnovers at the wrong time. If you don't fumble twice in the fourth quarter, you maybe win that game by 14 points, and we're having a completely different conversation last week leading into the Civil War. So part of my takeaway from it, being slightly positive on Oregon State, was that you're not going to see a talent gap that wide the rest of the season. Now, you're not wrong. I don't know what to make of Purdue. They did lose by 60 at home to Notre Dame. Cal looks feisty, but they look better than you, but I don't think Cal's unbeatable.
Should I'd hate to interrupt you. Should be noted just for the record before we get to Purdue at some point this week. You basically had the same team you have now play in the bowl game against Notre Dame. How'd that go?
Not great.
So Notre Dame would have also housed you this weekend.
Not great.
I hate to say that, but it's
yes,
true.
Probably. But what my larger takeaway though is just simply that yes, there are challenging games left on their schedule. It's not as easy as maybe some thought coming into the year because of the way Boise looks, UNLV looks, the way Cal looks, Washington State is awesome.
Yeah, Cal's another
in a
team.
moment.
Thank you for bringing them up.
So I understand that it looks a little more challenging, but I also don't think that you're playing anybody that has close to that level of talent the rest of the season. And so that's the reality. The part about Oregon that was always true was that they just needed to get out of their own way. And how many times did they turn the football over on Saturday?
0.
How many times did they have a penalty that called back a big play?
0?
Yeah. Right? How many times did you look at them and they're like, what are you doing? That was stupid. Why would you do that? Not very many, other than letting a quarterback scramble on 3rd and 15 and pick up a first down and losing track of a guy who really the only thing they can do to beat you is use his legs. That was kind of dumb, but they didn't do anything to hurt themselves. And when they play at that level, that's what the score is going to look like. And so it's a barometer game for you. I would also take away going forward, the Jabari Johnson thing, we need to, like, what are we doing? Why is he
They're doing
getting
the Aiden Childs thing.
I just that was an absolute momentum killer. Not that they're going to win that game if they don't do that, but they were moving the ball well as an offense.
Yes.
They moved it great on the first drive, had to settle for the field goal and kicked it into an offensive lineman. They scored a touchdown on their second drive. You bring him in, he's dropping snaps. It's pretty obvious what you want to do. Like,
are other programs doing this? Because they're doing this again. They did it last year with DJ and Aiden, and I thought maybe they're doing this to replace DJ at some point, and they didn't. Are other programs doing this, playing a freshman like one series or more a game and then putting the other guy back in
I've
most
seen
of the way?
it, but I don't think in the first quarter. Like
I guess Texas is doing this
because I asked about that last.
well, they had to because Quinn Ewers got hurt. They weren't
know.
playing Arch before blowouts, though. They weren't giving him the third series of the game automatically.
Well, I know he had played in a different game, but again, I think they were blowing that game out.
They were blowing him out.
Bama's not. I mean, I'm not comparing
not
Oregon
doing
State
it.
to these pro. I'm just like, I don't see this happening, and so I'm like kind of curious what's behind this. I think their offense is what their offense is. Like Gundy, we had alluded maybe they're going to do some stuff we haven't seen. I don't think they have stuff we haven't seen.
He tried a trick play. It got blown up, but he tried a trick play.
Yeah, he had tried a trick play against San Diego State, and they dropped the ball. I think this is just who they are, and we need to accept that, and we need to move on with stop acting like there's a playbook section that's not open. If Gundy had it, he'd opened it up.
Yeah.
Their quarterback is limited throwing. Clemens, he was the big get for them in the transfer from Michigan.
Done nothing. Is he banged up or is he just not playing?
He wasn't. He was hurt, so he wasn't starting. And they also had an offensive lineman not randomly play. Wells was out at the start, and I was like, "Where'd that come from?" So they were down 2 offensive linemen to start the game.
Yeah, you got no chance, man.
And that's kind of where mentally I was making steak tacos. I had some friends over. You know, I love this game. This game is fun for me. I grew up liking watching this game, not really having a bias, and now I root for Oregon State in it. And September vibes felt weird. I saw the offensive line thing. I'm like, oh God, this is not going to go well. And the unfortunate thing, you're right, they won't play a team as tough as Oregon the rest of the way. But Washington State looks damn good.
They do.
Now again, football is football. We don't know who's going to stay healthy.
And they have faltered late in seasons in the past. You got them at the end of the year.
Boy, that Cal game right now looks like a field goal fest, an ugly game that you hope you can, and you don't have a field goal kicker, so like that's going to get ugly. Boise is better than you. I would just outright say that. And UNLV with Odom, if they weren't attached to Nevada, they would have taken UNLV over Colorado State. There's no question in my mind about that. And we'll get into some conference stuff later. So those teams look better than you, or one of them looks like they can beat you. The unfortunate thing for Oregon State, that was their worst game of the year by a mile. They got blown out by their rival, and here's the worst part. It was their Fox game.
It was, a big nationally televised game.
So, Fox and ESPN completely railroaded this conference. This should still be a great conference. It doesn't exist anymore, and they're trying to bring it back to a pseudo Mountain West thing. And unfortunately for us, our Beavs, that game was on Fox. That was the national Fox game, and Oregon got to look like Oregon, and Oregon State looked like the team that, in some people's minds, got rightfully ditched at the altar for all this conference realignment thing. That was the bummer for me.
Yeah.
When they lost to Oregon, that didn't shock me. It was that was their big Fox national game, and that was the margin of victory. That was the blowout on national television.
Well, I do want to get to that next because I do think that's we've kind of covered Oregon and Oregon State, just the feeling about the rivalry. Because I'll even say this, the trash talk when you beat a rival is fun. It's always enjoyable. Even though Oregon State fan was a bit yappy last week, it didn't feel fun. I didn't enjoy it. It just everything about it. Like Oregon State fan was texting in earlier, saying I'm just bummed about everything that's going on.
It just
and
didn't
it's a
feel
game
right.
in September,
Yes,
and
100%.
the gap is only going to widen in the years to come. And it just nothing about it feels right. And I look. I am thrilled that my team looked like the team that I thought that they could be. And I was thrilled with the way that they played. That was as efficient of offensive game as they have had under Dan Lanning. They scored every time they touched the ball. Gabriel was out of this world. He showed you his athleticism. The offensive line looked like it was settled. They got weapons everywhere. I'm salivating again on what this team can do. But that's almost a secondary takeaway for me from the game of just how much of a giant bummer the entire thing is, because I didn't feel the way that I normally feel beating Oregon State and getting to laugh in your face.
I would actually love to throw this, because I know we need to go to break. I would love to throw this to people, to any listener out there that was a Beaver at that game, if you went to the game. I did not go. I heard from a couple people that went that they were surprised how many more Duck fans
There's a lot
were
of green
in
there.
attendance.
A lot of green.
And I'm just wondering how many of those Beaver fans really were doing what Mike Parker said that he had listeners on his show say of like, I'm out. I don't care about this game anymore. I don't want it to exist. Like, I thought that was kind of, just fodder. And maybe it's a little more true than I was willing to admit because there were more green and yellow, and I heard it wasn't quite the atmosphere they thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it felt
And
like that on
surprised
TV.
me. That surprised me.
Felt like that on TV.